We're live.
Awesome.
Yay.
Great. Thanks, Michael. Okay, everyone. Welcome to another Node.js Community Committee meeting. I'm Tierney Siren, and we have a bunch of folks on today. This is I think, the largest ComCom meeting we've had, so good start to the new year for sure. Okay, so we have a relatively full-ish agenda. I removed a couple things just because they were outdated or kind of moot at this point. But I did, comment on those appropriately and, try to help move us forward on that. Do we want to start off with initiative updates? That sounds like a no. Do we have any updates from internationalization, mentorship, delegates, collection, outreach, redesign at all?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yep.
Sorry, yeah. Okay, I can start with some updates from Node.js collection. So there's also a issue in the end, but it's the same update for the issue and for the initiative itself. There's a PR open, which I need to update. There was some feedback from Tierney and some other people also from the process. And there was some discussion on another issue about if we should maintain the Node.js collection anymore or not, as there's not much traffic as we see. But I suggested that we go on until the get Collab summit with Node.js collection, update the process and see if we can get more blogs and more submissions from people. After that, if that's not possible until the next Collab summit, after that we can think about if we don't want to maintain it anymore. But yeah, I have some things on my to-do list to update in the process, and once that's done, I'll let everyone in the ComCom know that we are following this new process, and it's like more easy and more open for everyone. I may need to have some meetings with Rachel also. We can create some content on our social media accounts that our blog is more accessible now and open for anyone for submissions. Yeah, that's it.
Awesome. Cool. Any other initiative updates?
I've got an initiative update on website redesign / node.js.dev. It's more an update on not having an update. So for context, back in last summer, I started individually pinging people about whether or not they'd be willing to step into more of a co-champion role, as my bandwidth for that has been sort of curtailed. There weren't any promising leads back then, so I just kept it on. But I think in the past few months, I have wanted to bring someone back in the same role. So I'm putting this out there as if anyone wants to step up as co-champion, in addition to Adam, that would be super, especially because it's a bit of a lower workload maybe than other ones because we have 2 champions, but at the same time, I think it's necessary for someone to have more bandwidth than I do right now to take on the co-champion role.
Co-champion for the minutes. This is co-champion for which initiative?
For a website redesign / node.js.dev.
Right. Okay.
We don't have that repo anymore. It's everything is in node.js.dev, so that clarity needs to be reflected. But until a person does step in who's able to both shepherd the PRs along and attend the ComCom meetings and also has privileges to log into meetings or start the meetings for the initiative, I'm happy to just stay on. It's just I'm putting this out there for transparency.
Cool.
Yeah, and for internationalization. Oh, sorry, somebody else speaking. No.
Go ahead.
Hey, how's it going? So for internationalization, I am just coming up to speed again on the project. There's a lot of there's various activity and interest from disparate parties who have been involved in the past. I think it's I think 2020 is a good year to get this thing off the ground. So we should really I think it's definitely something that I want to focus on. And I am excited to get some of the people who have expressed interest working on it again. So I think, yeah, I mean, there's definitely I'm consistently getting requests for translations in different languages. There's no shortage of people that want it. I mean, obviously, it's a thing that we need to be doing, yeah, I think finally hitting a point in 2020 where I can consider it an option for me to do so. I'm happy to continue to help with that and boot up some organizer meetings, and or working group meetings and that sort of thing. So yeah, really excited for that. Not much to report since I haven't been actively involved, but coming back in now, so excited for that.
Hey Ben, let's chat offline. I had one of those ComCom open office hours meetings, and I had one person interested in helping with Russian. And,
oh yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, let's talk.
Yeah, that'd be awesome. I met a couple other people last year at JSConf.eu who were interested in helping with Russian as well. So there definitely seems some growing interest for that. That's awesome. Yeah, let's chat.
Hello everyone. So in Outreach, we have finally completed that community page we were talking about. I'm going to just put the link here in the chat. This is sort of a new, stab at the new community page for Node.js. The earlier one was sort of just a stub page. So what we are going to do next is we are going to put this PR into the Node.js.dev repository for the website redesign initiative. If you folks have any comments, definitely feel free to reach out there.
Cool. Tierney, you're on mute, but I'll jump in and say an update on user feedback, which is something that we suggested moving to the OpenJS Foundation. I finally moved the repo over there. I still have a lot of cleanup to do and make it like OpenJS focused and clear out the things that are not feedback related. But I did it in a way that the Node.js repo still exists, and we can archive that repo. And I have here, I think do I have the link still? Yeah. I created an issue to archive the Node.js user feedback repo, and then we can just kind of move on to the OpenJS side of things. But if you have any interest in user feedback surveys and kind of helping flesh out that framework or whatever the work is needed there, please let me know.
Awesome. Great. Any final initiative updates? Cool. That's definitely the most full initiative update section we've had in a while. So I'm very, very glad. Awesome. We can start moving on to the agenda. The first item in the agenda is the Node.js admin issue, Node.js social media accounts. So this is an issue. Sorry, go ahead.
We skipped the CPC and board meeting updates.
We did. I'm sorry. I apologize for that.
Not having said that, I don't have too much to update on the board front unless anybody have any questions. Joe, I don't know if you had anything to add on the CPC front.
Yeah, let's see. First of all, we have a few people that are not co-hosts. I don't know if they want to turn their video on or if you can even do that after we start streaming, but I thought I'd mention it. And hi, Liz, welcome.
Hi, everybody.
Hi. So CPC, I'm not sure. We kind of had skipped a few meetings through December, but we did have some great work in the at the Collab summits, which I don't think has been really touched on here at all. Some interesting stuff around code of conduct and moderation and things along those lines. Yeah, I'm not sure what exactly to share, but if you're interested, especially in the code of conduct stuff, we're gonna spin up something of a working group to really bootstrap that whole process being moved to the OpenJS Foundation and the complexities that that adds, kind of having a layer above and having multiple projects and such. If you have any interest in that, let me know. And
I think
I can't think of
something
what else.
specific on that front worth mentioning is the discussion around whether to inline or not inline the contributor covenant. Seems like the CPC has landed on inlining, so that's what was landed in the current guidance, and I think that's in line with what the ComCom ended up doing for, or what Tierney did for the updated Node code of conduct. So that's just sort of a point of interest.
There's also one relatively large thing just at the foundation level. Electron joined as announced intent to join as a foundation project, and they are going through the incubation process presently. So
yeah,
that's another kind of thing that if you weren't at the event, you might not have seen.
To clarify, they're joining the impact level, correct?
That's to be determined during the incubation process. That would be my guess, but still TBD as far as I understand.
Cool.
And then I guess one other thing I'll add, and I know Rachel's here, but there's an email in your inboxes for ComCom folk about the event in the summer, and there's some renaming discussion happening. I think the particular thing is that Node is no longer in the name, and so we just wanted to make sure that there's awareness there. Personally, I always felt like Node plus JS Interactive was the clunky name, so I don't mind that we're moving on from that. But check your email inboxes and weigh in. I think there should be a survey there and a little bit of space to add any comment that you have.
There is also, just in that vein, since the event has moved to June, so this is like the next OpenJS Interactive type event. It's being paired with Open Source Summit North America, I think, in Austin, Texas, one of the Linux Foundation events. So it's kind of a sister event. Given that, I believe the Collaborator Summit will be happening there, which means in the vacuum of JSConf EU not happening, that will be the first Collaborator Summit of the year. And then I've heard suggestions that there is another node-specific European event that the Collaborator Summit might also, the European version of the Collaborator Summit might be paired with. So just if you have questions about that or like need context, feel free to reach out to me. I don't want to make commitments, so that's like why I'm not naming the events or anything like that. But I just want to make sure that's on people's radars as like some changes that are atypical for what we're used to.
Right.
Yeah, I think.
So go ahead.
I'll just say real quickly, Michael, to add some context. I think the thinking is at the OpenJS level, we have one kind of flagship Collaborator Summit, and then the projects themselves may have one or two, other ones as well. Because Electron has one or two, AMP has one or two. So we just want to, the thinking was that might be a good path to move forward.
Yeah, that's kind of what I heard people express as well. And it's nothing's been like written down or agreed. It seems like most likely the best thing to do is to have the next Collaborator Summit at the next iteration of the conference. That then leaves the question, as you said, typically that's around when we would have had the European one. So what do we do there? And a few ideas have been thrown out, but it's very much a throw ideas thrown out, what's a good idea kind of stage.
And I'll also add too that we had a Collab Summit retrospective earlier this week and are already excited about planning the next one, which I think is great that we have a really long runway. So there may be some issues coming up in the Collab Summit repo, which is now, I believe, in the OpenJS org, that is kind of soliciting ideas and thoughts and things that, you know, people might be interested in or people might want help with, or we basically want to get the ball rolling to see how we can connect the dots and make it a really robust event and see what sort of overlap there may be or how we can support the projects if they have an interest in having sessions, but perhaps don't have the folks to staff it. And then I'll just say really quickly, of course, the travel fund still exists. And that is something we should make use of, all the projects should make use of to support the things like the Collaborator Summit.
Awesome. Cool. With that, I think we can probably move on. Anything else in OpenJS Foundation or board stuff that folks have questions about? And it's okay if you do. Not trying to time box, but yeah, does anyone have questions on that? Cool, that sounds like we can move on then. So the next, the agenda item is, the first agenda item is the issue 454 in Node.js/admin. This is Node.js social media accounts. This is one I created. So a while ago, Rachel Ramoff reached out to me. I hope I'm saying your last name right, Rachel. She reached out to me and discussed the possibility of the Node.js project taking over our own social media accounts. There's a variety of reasons, the largest being we're the only one that they manage. This, to some extent, made sense under the Node.js Foundation. It makes less sense under the OpenJS Foundation, where like, and you know, we are one of the largest account, if not the largest. I believe our account is like double the size of the OpenJS Foundation account itself, at over 600,000 followers on Twitter, and then 100,000 on LinkedIn, and then 21K on Facebook. So we're like relatively high impact. But what I specifically jumped at this because I've consistently heard from folks, and this isn't a dig at anyone who's managed this account, but for the last few years, I've heard that you know, I followed the Node.js account out of a feeling of obligation because it's so fundamental to the work I do, but it doesn't really tweet things that are relevant, or doesn't share things that are relevant in any of the platforms to Node.js itself. Like previously, especially when we were the Node.js Foundation, it was very much a foundation account rather than a project account. And I think we're at the point now where there's the possibility of kind of reaffirming that and realigning that in a way that is helpful to our ecosystem and our community. And I think that it's a good unifying thing for our project as a whole to manage as the TSC and the COM come together. So in this, you know, in this issue, I just brought that up. I kind of outlined a lot of those details, and I also made a small proposal for how this could be managed. Basically, just managing it the exact same way we manage moderation. So any member of ComCom or TSC can object with 1-1. That person, you know, so someone like I go and submit myself as someone to manage this account. There is a, you know, week or 2 week period where for objections, if there is any -1, and those -1s can be filtered through the chair people of the various committees or the 2 committees. But if there is a -1, if there's an objection, that person is not able to participate in this way. So that's the process we currently follow for moderation, and it's been relatively successful. And I think this specific thing is very important. So like this, you know, I don't want to call it like an initiative, but this task that we have is like, if we do take this on, which we don't have to, but we can. If we do take this on, is a very high impact thing. The Node.js account on Twitter is 600,000 people that you're broadcasting to. That's larger than many stadiums, and it's a verified account. The LinkedIn is a similarly large size, and well, not similarly large, it's a 1/6 of the size, but also larger than most stadiums. And you know, Facebook is, you know, just another large audience. So this is a high impact thing, and we do want to make sure we have it's people that the committees have trust in. So, and aren't going to tweet or post bad things to various accounts. So
pictures of cats or something.
I mean, pictures of cats are fine.
but I just have a question. So it seems like in this sort of scenario, and this, I think I'm contextualizing this right, but you're saying that the members who have access to the Node.js Twitter account to be able to represent that go through a similar process as we do with moderation. Now, is there a limit or a cap on the number of people that can do that? And if not, maybe that like it seems like with this sort of thing, it might be reasonable to have, and this is an opinion, like I'm just throwing this out there, I don't know where it would land, but having some kind of quorum, for the Node.js Twitter account based on like interest, or like 2 ComCom members, 2 people from the TSC, that sort of thing, so that we're not like, for instance, if we were in a scenario where we had like 8 people from ComCom using Node.js Twitter, and then like 1 person from the TSC.
Yep.
I don't think people who are looking to see the content that's relevant to them about the runtime are going to like get enough, representation there. So I think just like figuring out what that balance is up front, and how that needs to be sorted would be good, because just having like a balance of information, I think would be helpful.
And so one thing there with like moderation, my intent there was to not limit it to TSC and ComCom members. So anyone in the org would be able to kind of self-nominate and be accepted or rejected. But I definitely understand where that's coming from, and I do think that that would need to be figured out. There's also like other concerns of like, hey, I was going to use a generic name, but then it was the name of a ComCom member, so I was like, maybe I shouldn't. John Doe works at Amazon, for example, and like it becomes a maintainer of this, and then like, oh, Amazon releases this objectively cool thing for Node. There is a conflict of interest there, and also like what happens when like John goes and asks me to post that thing, which is fine. Like I would do that, but there's still like this like underlying conflict of interest of like asking someone to post something that benefits you. So there's definitely things like that, and I believe the current policy for that account is they don't post anything that's like corporate. I did run up against that when I was at NodeSource. Like I asked them to like retweet something or something like that. Yeah. And there were times where it was okay, and times when the answer was a no. And that might have changed at this point because of the foundation changes. But that, I do think that's also another area we need to approach. So I guess in saying that, my intent is to more point out that is like the moderation like approach is my baseline. And then I think if that's like accepted, then we could move on to like figuring out the more specific details of how we approach that.
Yeah, that makes sense.
I think that I did bring it up. It was, you added it to the agenda at the TSC, so we had a bit of a discussion. I think generally, people thought the approach was reasonable. There was some discussion that maybe there might be a slightly different like nomination process, as opposed to no objections. It might need to have like more explicit like approvals or something, but
yeah,
that kind of discussion could take place in the issue. I just wanted to mention that was the one thing that was kind of pointed out.
Yeah, and I think that's also fine. Like I know there was at one point an issue with a moderation team member where like someone was on vacation and their objection just missed by a day because they were on vacation, and they like got it in at the last second, and it was like a second too late. So yeah,
Right.
Yeah. So that was a thing, and I think adapting that approach is totally fine. I do think that the consensus between consensus seeking, probably consensus between ComCom and TSC on these processes is like the approach we should take for this, just because of how impactful it is. So
yeah, Definitely, and I think the other thing that you pointed out is a very important aspect. You want to be able to promote things which are beneficial to both, you know, the community and the organizations and businesses that work with the community. But there is a line, and it's how you walk that line carefully, right? Because like you said, you know, sometimes the answer was yes because it made sense. In other cases, like, not quite comfortable. So figuring out how we don't prevent that completely, because that's not good either. Because I think as individuals, we'll probably, if it's like up to an individual to say, do I post this or not, we'll probably be pretty conservative.
Yeah.
So we want a way where you can say, like, you know, I'd like this to go out on behalf of IBM, for example, but I'm certainly not comfortable doing it on my own. But, you know, you can get enough validation from other people to say, oh yeah, that's well within the line, so no problem, right?
Yeah.
Versus just having it never happen is, you know, doesn't make sense.
Yeah, and that definitely brings up the other element that I posted in there that I did not talk about. And also, I'm taking up too much time on this, so I will shorten this after this. The other element I brought up there was a former ComCom member, Gregor, made a tool called Twitter Together, which is based on GitHub Actions, which basically allows you to control a Twitter account from a GitHub repo. So you basically merge PRs, and once the PR is merged, that is that becomes the the tweet that gets sent. And he, I believe, also added the ability to schedule, which is nice. I could be wrong. He either said he did or is going to, because of our feedback.
Scheduling's important because, like, we want our regular thank you to the build sponsors and that kind of stuff.
Yeah, for sure. So that's a tool that we could use, and I think, like, in that context, using like proposing a tweet, like, first obviously, like, doing the normal consensus of like, hey, is this a few people, and then proposing it in a PR would be a fine way to go ahead and approach that. And then, like, obviously not merging it yourself, but I think that'd be a fine way to approach that. So yeah, I think that there's, like, all of the problems have relatively straightforward answers or solutions. And for context, this is a problem that we faced in IOJS. I was involved with Michael in trying to get this a similar thing done for the official IOJS account. And things are in a much better place now in terms of tooling for this than they used to be. So I'm relatively confident that we'll be able to manage this successfully. Cool. Yeah, if you have thoughts, feedback, suggestions, yes, Gary, the tweet PR will be in a public repo. Sorry, I just saw that. Cool. I don't see any other questions. If you have thoughts, feedback, comments, requests, anything, definitely go take a look at that issue and post them. I think getting discourse on this and moving forward on it would be good. It's something I'd like to see us be able to succeed in. And take over, because I think it does have present the opportunity to add a lot of value to our ecosystem directly. So,
not to take up like more time on this topic, but very quickly, I feel like there also comes some kind of responsibility of discovery with that, to like make the messaging relevant. And so I don't know what kind of systems are in place, and I definitely don't have context on how this is done in the past, and just maybe relying on people, from the community to tweet about the relevant things from the working groups that are happening or whatever. But there's also that element of like, hey, there's the audience, and who's the champion, or who's the person who's a part of this initiative to like figure out, oh, like what's actually relevant to to the spectrum of people that we're serving. So just something to consider on a messaging system that's so broad.
That also does feed into, this is not just outbound, this is also inbound, right? People do tweet at Node.js a lot, and like Rachel does a pretty good job of like retweeting things that are relevant, like retweeting when there's releases, or like retweeting when there's a meeting like this one. So that is another element of it, that it gets a lot of inbound. I if you've ever searched at Node.js, holy hell. But yeah, it's not just outbound like broadcasting, it is also inbound. And I mean, even small things like liking someone's tweet from the Node.js account, hugely impactful. And or like liking someone's LinkedIn post or Facebook post. That is an impactful thing, and that's part of the responsibility of this too, is that additional kind of level of management, not just outbound. So.
Absolutely, thanks, man.
Cool. Anything else on that?
Do we see this eventually becoming an initiative?
So this would be a joint thing between the Node.js and the community committee. It's not a ComCom initiative. It would be a team in the way that the moderation team is a team.
Awesome.
Yeah. Cool. Cool. Okay. Let's move on to the next agenda item. The next agenda item is remove individual membership, director role, and move William Kepke to emeritus. I had merged this. There was three green checks. So the README has been updated to remove the reference to individual membership and move William, who is a member not through election, but through the individual membership role, to emeritus, since that role no longer exists. So just wanted to give an update on that. That has been merged, and that brings us closer in line to the current state of the world with the foundation. Any questions on that? Cool. The next agenda item is add licenses to ComCom repos. So this is one I opened up. Issue 271 from a long time ago brought up the discussion for licensing repos, since this was like relatively undefined and something we weren't maybe consistent on totally. This is from March 8th, 2018. We did eventually get an answer. It did take a bit, but we did get one, and we should probably go through and audit the various ComCom repos and make sure that they are appropriately licensed, and if they are not, license them appropriately. I don't know how that looks in terms of like, if there's been a bunch of work done without a license, do we have to go through and get every committer's approval to merge that license? I don't know, but it's definitely something that we should at least begin to try to align with more appropriately.
Any questions? Might just be opening an issue and saying this is what we intend to do in every single repo, and if people say we need to get approvals, then we'll start doing that. But if not, then life's a bit easier.
Yeah. The thing that I get concerned about with that is like a contributor who committed and then left, or someone who's still contributing, I guess, could if it's unlicensed, they technically own the copyright to their own stuff. And so they could come in and then like sue the patient. And I'm not a lawyer, but like that's a thing that could happen theoretically. So it's like less say, okay, cool, nobody objected, and it's like we have to get explicit approval if it's unlicensed, as far as I know. So that's going to be tricky. And you know, if necessary, we can go and delete those bits. Like if someone has an issue, we can work with them in good faith. But yeah, it'll be challenging for sure. So it's just something to be aware of in this.
We could use foundation legal resources to check this or check our actions on this. I don't think this would be an unreasonable use of that.
Yeah. Yeah. and perhaps that's something if that we can ask to bring to the board in the coming days, if that makes sense. Yeah.
The other thing is like what, if it's what would actually be reused from some of these repos, right? Like old issues of discussions and whatever. I'm not sure there's too many people who are like, hey, I need to copy that stuff or use that stuff. If there's specific documents that people want to pull and reuse, those might be easier to get identify the contributors and get the okay to add the licenses.
Yeah. Oh, speaking of that, we need to update the license in ComCom. It says Node.js Foundation. Sorry. Yes. Yeah, I think it's something that's, I don't think this is going to be like a short-term simple thing. Not that it's like excessively complex. It's just not something that's going to be straightforward for us to answer on. And yeah, I mean, like if it's just documents, perhaps we don't need to go down the path of licensing it, and we can just for future stuff kind of go down the path of always including an MIT license. Rather than retroactively fixing everything. That's totally a solution. So yeah.
Right. It's like, I'm just thinking like if it's repos that have code and people want to reuse that code, it's clear they need to do that. Yeah. Repos where we're basically using it to manage our work, it's a little bit less clear that it's a problem. Like we want to get into the states so that anything future just has a license.
Yeah.
I'm just wondering how big a deal is it for some of these. So it'd be worthwhile more like in my mind figuring out ones that we do think matter and doing those first is kind of what I was thinking.
Yeah, that really makes sense.
Do you think it's worth delineating between non-code and code repos with MIT and a different license?
I think that's part of the answer was, the legal answer was what should we do? And so whatever that said, I can't remember off the top of my head.
Yeah, that was part of it. And it's basically like for most things use MIT for materials. The materials documentation provided to be provided by users, to be provided to the users, use CC BY 4.0. And for internal community documents, use MIT.
Gotcha.
So yeah, there's a full and embodied answer there. So cool. Any other kind of comments on that one? I don't know if there's anything explicitly for us to do except for perhaps go and investigate that. I don't know if there's anything explicitly that we can do right now. So cool. I don't hear any other comments, so we should, I'm going to start time boxing a little bit more aggressive because we have 15 minutes left. Starting in examples initiative. So this is another one I created. This is relatively full context. Basically, my intent here is to start a new ComCom initiative that's focused on building out small examples that go beyond Hello World. So like building a CLI with Node, building XYZ, building a web server with Fastify, or building an AWS Lambda function with Node.js, right? And like having examples of how to do all the things that people with Node.js would do. And you'll notice that the last one was definitely very Ben, it's linked in the issue. Sorry, I saw your comment just now. It's linked in that issue. Yeah, so being opinionated and allowing space for the real world stuff people do, like products. People use Lambda. People also use Google Cloud Functions. So my intent is to have a useful resource, like real world resource for people that creates a space where they can learn how to do things in the real world rather than the bajillion express hello world, right? Because there are a million of those and there's very little beyond that in Node in terms of like going beyond that kind of level of intricacy in tutorials. So yeah, that's the intent of this, is basically to build out kind of a set of resources to do that. There are a few things that we would want to do with this, that, you know, more of the details of like having each of these be their own sub project, and then having something like Dependabot, which is enabled on the org, so I can enable it on the repo, update dependencies automatically, and then having CI for each of these. So to reduce the maintenance burden of like, oh, this one stopped working 3 years ago. We'll kind of be able to get around that and, you know, ensure that everything still works over time. So there will be some engineering to get around those things, but that's work I'm happy to spend time on. And there does seem to be interest from a few folks already. Tara, and then you know, Blake and a few other folks, a model, so have said they'd be happy to help contribute some examples. So there have been no objections, and I kind of asserted, you know, I've not heard anything negative about this. So I'm probably going to end up creating that this week, and then trying to lay down the groundwork for that structure. And then I will also PR in a new initiative into ComCom and create the team once that initiative is merged. So yeah, that's what that is.
My only comment is there might be some caution just around things that use products in the examples. Like if it, like you mentioned a couple of those, like AWS and Google. Like if it's just using Express, another third-party project, or gRPC or whatever, I don't think there's too much to worry about. Once you get into it uses this specific offering from a particular company, that might require some more thinking, or, you know, put one of those in that uses AWS, then the next company along says, hey, well, I want my example in, and so how that gets
managed, see, I'm fine with that.
The tricky part.
See, that's actually kind of what I want. That helps bolster contributors to it, and like helps get more examples of how to do things. And that competitiveness is something that I would very much encourage in this, because it gets us a larger set of examples that are usable to the ecosystem. And like, if it's a product, someone's probably using it, and someone will want to learn how to use it. And I don't see that necessarily as a loss, right?
Yeah, I'm just, and same with like the Twitter account. We want to enable the right things. It's just that's one where I think it needs to be very clearly messaged in terms of these are examples. Like these aren't necessarily endorsed examples, but it's a place where examples can live. And like, if you see one that's somebody else, well then, hey, just PR your own in and whatever. But that whole messaging needs to be there from the beginning to avoid that kind of the potential concern.
Yeah, I think you're gonna have to have some kind of policy doc for that, you know, just to say like this is what's up. These are examples for the community, you know, and if you're happy to contribute one, that's great. The other thought that came to mind was that it also implies that there are going to be maybe the need for tutorials like around some of these things, and I don't know if that's exactly what you're saying, because it sounds like what you're saying is creating a repository with examples that have like a basic, here's how you boot it up and used it or whatever, and this is what it looks like with the code and all that. But you know, it just seems like another great opportunity, if there are people willing to do that, to write tutorials that go into like Node.js.dev or Node.dev or whatever, you know, to be able to make that more accessible for like fundamental, you know, tutorials, I suppose.
Yeah. And one of the things that could happen there is basically, so the structure that I was thinking about with it is like having each kind of example be its own folder, and not at the top level, but like kind of distinguishing them like CLI or web server, or, you know, reverse proxy or something like that. And then in those kind of more higher level directory structures, examples have their own repos, and those own directories, and then directories have their own readmes. They have to be very comprehensive, rather than like, cool, here's how you do this thing, run npm start and you're good. That's not, I don't think, what we're looking for in an example. So yeah, I also have to
Awesome.
run to a new meeting in a few minutes. But yeah, so yeah, that's like, I don't just want to push code into a repo and hope it works.
Yeah.
That's explicitly not what I'm looking for, or what my intent is with this. Also, sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, we only have a few minutes left, and I'm very curious about the OKR stuff. It's not a lot of time to dive into it, but maybe we could touch on it and then spend more time on it next week. Or 2 weeks.
So this is an issue I created. I've created a lot of these, so I apologize. This one is specifically implementing OKRs. This was expressing intent to implement OKRs. For ComCom, for those who aren't familiar, OKRs are objectives and key results. It's something that originated at Google, and is like a kind of metrics tracking or measurement of goals, and if you were able to achieve them reasonably or not. And yeah, there's a lot of context in the issue. We had a session at the Collaborator Summit where we sat down and worked on some OKRs, and I put the HackMD, which is the tool we used to kind of collaboratively write this down, into that issue. So you can see that there, the first section of objectives of brainstorming is the top level bullets are the objectives that we kind of ended with. The +1 sub bullets are the people who participated, who kind of said, this is probably a good one for us to go after. And then, you know, the bullets under that for each of those top level objectives is like the reasoning or thoughts behind why we wanted to go for that one, and kind of deduping the other ideas into a broader category. And then below that, scaffolding out key results for objectives. The first level bullets are again the same objectives as previously stated, and then the key results are the sub bullets. So the proposed key results are the kind of things below. And so we got through the first two as a group, and then I went through and kind of worked on the second two independently with context from, I believe, Manil, who had kind of added some as well. So I kind of tried to broaden them and make them key results rather than objectives, and kind of go ahead and get something together. And we can still iterate on this. I'm planning to PR basically the scaffolding out key results for objectives section as a document. And then there are some questions and additional context in here. But this is hopefully something that we can agree to and kind of discuss a bit more. Like Joe said, we don't have that much time, unfortunately. I'm sorry. But yeah, this is, hopefully something that the intent here for this specific objectives and key results section, or this document, would be to have this as the income OKRs, and then initiatives themselves would align their OKRs. So they would go through and create their own OKRs, and I'm more than happy to sit through that process and help them kind of move that and move toward doing that. But they would create their own OKRs that somehow align to these, so that we can kind of make sure we're all moving in the same direction, and moving towards success for the entire organization in terms of ComCom.
So as far as these OKRs go, for clarity for the initiatives, is this something that we'd like to tell initiatives, hey, we're doing this at the ComCom level, and while initiatives typically have a fair amount of autonomy, is this something that we want to say, hey, you should definitely do this? You'll give you all the help you want, but it's preferable to not having these at all?
That's a great question. And I think that's something we should decide as a committee rather than me. I have my own opinion, but yeah, I think that's something we should discuss as a committee, yeah. Any other questions, thoughts, feedback, concerns?
Should we touch on these again next meeting and kind of go through them and spend a little time with them?
Yeah, for sure. I think we should probably prioritize this discussion in the next meeting.
Sounds good.
Yeah, this seems like a probably a top level discussion. It's interesting. I'll just say, you know, I guess in brief, it's interesting and really positive within the context of ComCom over the last like 2 or 3 years or whatnot to see the sort of accountability is not necessarily the right word, but just like, you know, I think asserting a commitment quarterly or whatnot for members to do things that they have expressed the interest in doing or, you know, asserted themselves to champion to do, that kind of thing is going to be such a healthy reminder, more so over and over again. And so I think in that effect, and I wasn't at the Collaborator Summit, so this kind of stuff might have already been all discussed and whatever, but I just think it's a really exciting time to do this now, you know, in ComCom, to be able to have that visibility on, you know, the commitments that are made and then seeing them through on the quarterly cycles. That's really awesome.
Yeah, and one last thing I'll add, we are not going to be able to finish this, the agenda today, unfortunately. But one last thing I will add there is that this isn't like you have to do this thing, otherwise you fail. That's explicitly not the purpose of OKRs. It's more of a, here's the goals we set. And then once we've hit the end of our frame, which my proposal would be the next Collaborator Summit and kind of do it a Collaborator Summit style, so we can define them at Collaborator Summits. Would my hope would be that, okay, now we can go look at the next set of OKRs, look back at what we were able to accomplish, the things we excelled at, the things we kind of fell behind on, and refine what we want to do in the next period, and then, you know, do that the next time and the next time, and that kind of helps us get to a place where we're able to more actively define the goals that we have and achieve them, and see where we're excelling and what we're really good at as a committee and as initiatives, and then go from there. So cool. With that, we're at time, and I actually have a hard stop now. So thanks y'all for coming, and we will see you in 2 weeks.
Good meeting y'all.
See you later.
Bye.
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 Bye.